welcome back to Dan's Fender Benders. Woo! Thanks for tuning in again. And yes, to all of my subscribers, I did step away for a little while, some life issues, but we want to get into that. But I'm glad to say that I'm back with a BC Rich Mockingbird review. So that's very exciting. That's coming up very shortly. And I just want to reiterate what this channel is all about. So it's about me sharing my love for guitars and sim racing with everybody. And I really love this whole community of giving and taking and just, growing from everyone's experience. So I want to share with you guys. I must admit my sim racing is a little bit more amateur and for fun, and the guitar playing might be a little bit better. So if you don't like the cars, you might like the guitars. If you don't like the guitars, you might like the cars. So I won't bore you with the tears, but coming up soon, right now, is a BC Rich Mockingbird review, famously played by Slash and Lita Ford and various others. And I think it's due for a comeback. What do you think? Awesome shape. Check it out. So this is a BC Rich Mockingbird. This was brought over from Japan. It spent its whole life there by a dealer that I sometimes buy from, who brings them over to Australia, and it's a great way for us to get our hands onto these classics. Now this is a player's grade guitar, so there's lots of dents and dings, but look up at the hardware first. We've got the licensed Floyd Rose. So if you didn't know with these guys how that works, Floyd Rose allows other companies to make them as long as they get a small commission, and so the difference in the quality is sometimes subjectable. This one's quite good, it's aged very well, it's very solid. As for the hardware, we've got two BC Rich authentic pickups, so these are wound, very similar sounding to, well, a lot of reviews liken them to the Damasio Super Distortions, and I'd agree with that. Now this is the old school Floyd, so this really kind of points it towards the 90s era. This is a wind in. Some are push in, some have got like a little screw here. So the wind in is like the old school style, and so as you go further around it gets tighter. The issue with that sometimes is that it hits the tuners when you're trying to undo it. So there's little issues there, and that's why it's kind of changed over the years. Now for controls, we've got the master volume. We've got a three-way switch, so we've got the old treble, we've got the two, bit of music there, and the neck, of course. Tone, no push pulls, and from what I can see, and I'll show you soon, the electronics look very standard. Maybe the volume port's been adjusted at some point, but we'll get to that. Now the body itself, besides being nice and beaten and worn, which debatably could do a refinish or not, has had some adjustments at some point. So someone's adjusted the strap lock to here to see if it balances better for them, but they're normally traditionally back here. And we've just got the normal dents on all the corners. Something that was pointed out to me, which I'm quite fond of trivia about guitars, is this big slope here is incredibly popular with session players. I had someone reach out to me about this guitar and tell me about how fond they were back in the day as a jazz musician playing Mockingbirds, believe it or not. It's like, when I see this shape, I think death metal, or at least heavy rock, hair metal. I don't think of jazz. But he swore by it. He goes, I love these guitars because you could sit for hours and hours and practice, and it was so comfortable because of that cutout. So normally when you think of a pointy guitar, that's not the first thing you think of is comfort, but hey. Moving on to the neck, it is a 24 fret, which is a bit weird because you normally see the double dots and you normally see it down here, but it is definitely a 24, so you notice that these two pickups are a bit closer. So I find when they're a bit closer like this, they're not quite as warm sounding, but it's still quite nice. Rosewood, traditional rosewood. The frets are worn, but no huge divots in them, so it has been obviously polished and crowned at some point, but it would need another one at some near future, depending on how heavy-handed you are. And moving up, and it's quite straight, by the way, the neck is really, really straight. Now moving up to here, this is something of interest. Sorry, I'm laughing because it hurts. We've got a locking tuner, which is very, very common with the tremolo, and so that's not weird, but the next part is weird. So we have a string tree, and this has clearly been done by an owner of this guitar at some point, because it's even drilled through the cover for the nut. And you'd ask yourself, why do you need a string tree if you've got a locking nut? Well, in their defense, I will say this: some people like to take the nut undone, lock the bridge, right, and then use it like a locking guitar. But then the problem is you don't have the string tension from the machine heads, so they've clearly went, well, we'll put a string tree in. But there's another issue with this, which I'm going to get to in a minute, which makes it even more ew. Headstock. This is my favorite. Out of all the BC Rich designs, I know everyone thinks of the big pointy 80s Warlock headstocks and stuff, but this has the 3x3, the open book, but not quite the same as Gibson. This was a bit more, I think this is a bit more stylish actually. You've got the Renaissance R, which looks quite fancy indeed, and yeah, they've just put like a veneer on the top here, but there's some other designs with binding and so forth, but yeah, this particular one, it screams Japanese. I'm gonna turn it over now, and I'm gonna build up some suspense to the back of that headstock, because we'll go over the body a little bit more first. As we come around the back, we notice all the wear and tear again, a little bit more severe on these edges here, and just that, oh hello, that's me, good old reflections. But this is my favorite part. That reminds me of like an album cover. Just that shape is just wicked, absolutely wicked. So we've still got the original trem cover, we'll have a look inside there soon, and the electronics. It is a bolt-on neck. There was an issue in the late 80s where there was a lot of feedback from people with BC Riches where the necks were twisting and stuff like that. I wasn't present, so I can't comment on it too much, but there was a whole era where they went bolt-on. Now they kind of do custom shop as neck through, and bolt-on is kind of like made to order in bulk. But this was an era where in Japan they definitely love this, and I agree. It's a straight neck, it's a bolt-on. Hey, Fender is very successful for doing it, so why not? Now the neck is incredibly well played. I would liken this to a C-shaped profile. It's very comfortable. It's not super thin, it's not super thick. It's definitely not a baseball bat. It is more very comfortable. It's not as thin as, say, an Ibanez, but yeah, I would put it in the thinner category. Now it has been incredibly well played. You can see the previous players' favorite spots here. That's where you hold it with your thumb, and it's just worn the finish off over the years, and that's just something you can't really replicate in feel. I know there's a whole relic team out there, but it's just something. There's a tiny little bit of flame in here, that's kind of cool. Now you've probably already seen what's going on up here, and this is the bit that makes me cringe. The person who put that string tree in with that interesting idea has also drilled right through the neck. I've seen this before, but it always makes you cringe, and just insult to injury. You know, you could plug it as well. You just get some toothpicks, a little bit of wood glue, a little bit of dust from sanding, and pop it on top, and then put maybe some true oil or some finish on there, and it'll look really nice. And at some point they've changed the locking nut too and drilled through. So now my big tip, and forgive me if you already know how to do this, but whenever you're drilling, just measure, put a bit of tape on the drill bit, so you don't go too deep. You know, it's just 2 seconds of extra thought prevents something like this from happening. So depending if this guitar sells or not, I might refinish that. We'll see. Now, same with the machine heads. They've changed them out at some point, which is not uncommon. It's a 20-year-old guitar, so they tend to wear out sometimes. So this is the Elgato non-locking, just the standard 3x3s, and clearly there's been a different spot where the mounting / secure screw goes, so they've changed that over. We've got a couple little nicks along here, nothing that can't be sanded thinner and not seen, but once again, that beautiful design there. I'm going to show you a little trick too when you're changing your strings on a Floyd Rose that's floating, because this is still floating. Grab a coaster. So this is one that's come from buying a set of bare knuckle pickups. So it's just a coaster, people, don't worry about it too. So fold it over a couple of times, maybe grab one from your favorite pub, and just basically sit it under the bridge. So that's going to hold it there floating. Man, black shows up everything, doesn't it? Even like this one, it's incredibly well worn. And so then we want to take off this, or unscrew, I should say, this guy over here. Now for this type of job, you just need some Allen keys, maybe some pliers, and so forth. So that's one bit down. And we're going to take our trusty Allen key and unlock the nuts up the top. I'll just give them a bit of a loosen, get them out of the way. Now I noticed something else here too, that we're going to get to in a minute, that there was clearly a shim. So yeah, I wonder why they went all the way through when reattaching this, because it does look a bit thinner than stock. So then we just, you know, tune the strings down a little bit, and that coaster trick should get us out of trouble when it comes to where the Floyd's going to go. I'm going to go ahead and remove the strings from the anchor points. So if you haven't owned a Floyd Rose before, and this is probably why a lot of people complain about them, is because there is a lot of extra things you need to do in order to get them in tune and balanced and set up correctly. And they're very much a multi-piece mechanical bit of kit. Now, a good trick too is you get your whammy bar, put it in there so they can do anything like this when you come to adjusting. Just hold it up and get it out of the way. And if you're wondering why I'm struggling, it's just the angle whilst you're trying to film and do this. It's a little bit different. I admire anyone that I watch now when it comes to having very smooth techniques with these videos, because I now know what you go through. The struggle is real. In the guitar industry, I noticed that there is a lack of conversation about that. So there should be a recommended guide to say how much Newton meters this requires. See, that just pulls out now, to tension this, but they don't say it. So we've taken the strings off. So as I said, you just loosen the tension here. That's what holds the string down. You don't need this guy in there anymore. And we can take these out to have a look. The stock standard BC Rich pickup, you can see there's not really much going on there. The cavities are pretty clean. We've just got a very industrial wire shielding around the side there and going through there, but very clean. It is very clean, and it looks like to me that this has not been taken out and put in several times. So that was nice. After seeing the headstock, that was a nice surprise actually, to see that hadn't been manipulated so much. Very, very clean. Once again, the pocket, you can see that painted right in there. So this is always going to be the giveaway of the actual original paint job. There's no indication that there's a veneer on top. You can't feel it, you can't see anything there. So that actually was quite refreshing to see that hadn't been manipulated too much. So let's get into the cavities. Actually, we'll do the tremolo first. Pretty darn clean. Looks like a brass block. It's definitely brass. I would vote that's a 37 or so, but because it's licensed, there's no indicator on there. The earth has been moved to the back of that. It's hard to see in the camera there, but it's actually running around and going on the back of that instead of on the front. So that's been changed. So that's going to give me the impression that this has been changed. This has been bodged a little bit at some point. So yeah, that happens. Looking at this bit, once again the screws are pretty easy to take off. Alright, so what do we got in here? So that's looking pretty clean. So 500k pot there, so that looks alright. That's definitely our tone down here. We've got a little cap on there, a couple of manipulated spots. So things have been changed in here at some point, and that volume master pot definitely has been changed because someone's just got a lake of solder in here. At least it's shiny. Shiny means good. Shiny's good. But the contacts here are looking really solid, and they're not flexing, they're not crusted. So I'll just bring that a bit closer. Yeah, so it's looking okay, and it does sound good. There's no scratching when I was playing it, so I can leave that, but you can see it's been changed at some point. So you wouldn't argue to a potential buyer that this is stock electronics. Okay. Now let's move on to the neck. We'll take that off as well. So what I like to do is, rather than just taking each screw out, we're going to go in a cross-section formation just to ease that neck out. Always have it on a nice flat surface as well. Don't be trying to hold the neck as you do it at the same time. You can see that they've got these specially designed screws, because some people have ferrules in there, and then they put a normal screw on top, but they've fashioned them so that would be a bit of a bugger. If you lost the screw, you may want to source a two-part scenario. It is detachable, my apologies. They've been together for so long. So you'll notice that the bit near the body was this long, and they've shortened them at the factory at some point. They've just literally cut them off. Yep, as you do. If it works. Alright, so what about this one? No? So maybe these were the initial inserts, and then someone's put a third-party screw in there at some point. I don't know. Or if that was actually BC Rich. Oh, don't worry, that was just the tremolo arm that fell off the table. So you can see that the neck has been taken off a few times, because the screw holes, you can see where they've pulled the neck in, because they haven't tensioned. They've probably just done one screw up really tight and then tried to do up the other ones tighter, and there is no indication here. Wow, you can just tell that's just hand oil that's built up over the years, or at least the finish, and this is where it's not at all. It's like unearthing a tomb or something. Alright, so let's look at the neck pocket. So a little bit disappointing. There is nothing written in here whatsoever. You can see that they drill a hole, probably with a long drill bit, to go through the cavity to get the neck wiring through here and there. So they go through here and then it goes through there. A lot of manufacturers do that, because you can see the pickup from there. But otherwise, yeah, no branding whatsoever, but this is definitely all the original paint job. And you can see that there's no cap or anything, and this definitely looks like maple. As you can tell, it looks very much like the neck, and it is a two-piece, because we've got the split there where it's been glued together. A lot of guitars do that. Some are 3 or 4 or 5 pieces. If you're very lucky, you can get a solid one piece. It doesn't really affect the tone very much. But anyway, that's that. Now I'm going to go and clean it all up, restring it, put it back together, and maybe take a vote if we should refinish this, and debate if I'm going to, you know, plug these very unsightly holes in. It's just so hard not to, because it's that fight. Do I do that and then waste a lot of money fixing this guitar and selling it for nearly the same amount of money that it will sell for as it is? I'm sure anyone who's bought and sold guitars a bit before has the same debate going on in their mind, especially if you love fixing guitars. And maybe leave a comment below what you think, And thanks for tuning in to Dan's Fender Benders. Peace. Love you all. Bye.